Hey there, everybody. This is Gary from Constricted and Addicted. Today, what I'm going to do is I want to talk about, why I prefer boa constrictors over ball pythons. What I found with having multiple ball pythons was that there was problems. There was many problems to be experienced, and they're very good snakes. As a matter of fact, if you're looking for your first snake, I would recommend a ball python just because they're very easy. They very rarely show any sort of defensiveness. This is my experience, and they're fairly easy to take care of. They don't require a whole lot. But I've owned boa constrictors for a long time, so now I've got these ball pythons, and the ball pythons to me they just didn't cut it. They didn't do for me what the boa constrictors were doing for me. So what I wanted to do is just put together 5 reasons for me, right? Like the 5 reasons that I could think of, and maybe some of these reasons are gonna, kind of run into each other, but the 5 reasons for me why I prefer a boa constrictor over a ball python. And what I want to really put across, right, is that these are great snakes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a ball python. Matter of fact, I still have 2 of them in my collection. This one here, I will not get rid of. This is Willie. He is my blue-eye leucistic. He's a super Russo het clown, and what he is to me is a really neat snake. He's outgoing. He's definitely he breaks pretty much everything of the 5 reasons that I'm going to talk about why I don't like ball pythons, or I shouldn't say why I don't like, why I prefer boa constrictors over ball pythons. So reason number 5, husbandry is everything. Ball pythons, if their heating isn't correct, if their humidity isn't correct, everything can go wrong, from shedding to eating. And this is just my experience. This is what I have experienced with a multiple collection of ball pythons. Some people may have multiple ball pythons in their collection and not have any problems. But what I experienced was a room that was below 70 degrees, a rack that was kept at 90 degrees, humidity, and the combination, I'm assuming it may have stressed the snake out. I'm not sure. But what I ended up having to do was move a heater into the room to bring the room temperature up to about 75 degrees. Once I did that, the snakes started eating again. So for me, what I found is that you really have to be on point with the environment for a ball python. They don't require a whole lot, but what they require is the correct heat, the correct humidity, and if you have that, chances are you're going to have a ball python that eats pretty well. Number 4, for me, I just don't think they interact that much. Willie, again, is the exception. Willie does interact. Once he's been out for a little while, he's a very, very good snake. He cruises around a little bit, but for the most part, you could pull a ball python out and they just kind of sit in your hand. There's not really any exploration. There's no interaction. And to me, it's just kind of like my 3rd reason. To me, they're kind of like a pet rock, whether they're out or whether they're in their enclosure. My boa constrictor, you can see Coconut. Coconut's kind of out right now. I don't know if you can see Matilda. Matilda's down there. A couple of my boa constrictors are not hiding. They're just kind of out, and they're very accessible. Now, the ball pythons, on the other hand, they're in their hides, and that's where they prefer to be. So again, me personally, I really prefer a snake that wants to interact and explore, be inquisitive. And my experience is I don't see that with ball pythons. Now, I have been on Instagram, and YouTube for that matter, and I do see people with very, very inquisitive, very interactive ball pythons. Like I said, this is my experience. Willie likes to wrap. Some of the other ball pythons that I had wouldn't even wrap. They just kind of drape themselves. So for me, they're kind of like pet rocks. The number two reason for me, and this happened quite often, is for no reason at all, a ball python would go on a hunger strike. You would try to feed them and they'd refuse their food. And I would try multiple different ways to get the snake to eat. Heating is right, humidity is right, room temperature is right, ambient temperature is right, everything is correct. And the snake wouldn't want to eat. And it would go sometimes up to 6 months. Now, I like to think that I'm a good snake owner, so I would want my snakes to eat. I want them to be healthy. But then I would go onto forums and I would talk to people, or I would post something, and other ball python owners would respond and say, hey man, it's not you, it's the snake. Ball pythons are notorious for it. They're okay. If they start to lose weight, then you got to worry. Now, one of the things I did notice is that they never lost weight. But it would stress me out because I want the snake to eat. I'd be feeding it and I couldn't get it to eat. The number one reason for me, and this applies to Willie, it applies to Lily, my lavender albino spider ball python that I have, is they are picky. They are very picky eaters. This guy right here, he's 2 years old, and he eats just over a small rat, or a very small medium rat. He's a very good sized snake. He is a 2019 snake, and if the rat's temperature is not correct, right? If it's bumps him on the snout, if it's got too much water on it, because I feed him frozen thawed, so they don't get nothing live. This snake has never ever been fed live food. But if it's too wet, if it's not warm enough, if it bumps him on the snout, he'll turn his nose to it. Half the time, I can put it on a little plastic dish. Set the plastic dish in the rack with him, close it, come back about an hour later, and he's eating it. But there's also times where the last time, which was last weekend when I fed my snakes, he didn't eat. So I've just come to accept that that's the way ball pythons are sometimes. They just go on hunger strikes. They don't eat well. But then prior to that, he's a powerhouse. He eats everything you put in front of him. So they're just really inconsistent eaters. I look at me at what I'm doing. Is my husbandry off? Am I doing something wrong to prevent the snake from eating? And the answer is no. It's the ball python. Sometimes they just do that, and I don't like it. That's the number one thing about ball pythons is, for me, the ones I have in my collection, I would get these snakes that would be just, they would go on hunger strikes, or they just would refuse food, and I didn't know what to do about it. So somebody once told me that if you have a ball python collection, you better have a boa constrictor handy so that you'd have somewhere to take the wasted food, right? So that's my reasoning. That's why I like boa constrictors so much. The main reason is I just love the interaction that I get with my boas. My Dumerils boa is a very, very socialized boa constrictor. I take my Dumerils boa to kid shows, kid fairs, schools. He has absolutely no problem with touching and being handled around a bunch of kids who are yelling and screaming and oohing and awing. He's very, very, very docile, gentle animal. And I've got Coconut up here who, you got another 5.5 foot boa constrictor that is very gentle around people. And the other baby boa constrictors that I have that I'm raising up right now, watching them and interacting with them, it's really neat for me to see the progress and to build that relationship that we have, so that, as they get older, they trust me, they trust other people. I have one boa constrictor in my possession right now. That's a baby. And I've never had this problem with a ball python. Never. But it's a demon child. Every time I open up the rack, it's like Sybil. I don't know who's going to be in there, what it's going to do. I have to wear gloves to get her out because A, I don't want to get bit, and B, I don't want her to get hurt. And if I open up that rack and she starts striking at me or hissing at me, I know just to leave her alone. I never had that problem with a ball python, but I've got 16 boa constrictors, and I've got one boa constrictor that does that. So it's not a bad, percentage. So, like I said, I want to make sure that I put out there that, ball pythons are great beginner snakes. They are absolutely wonderful animals. If you're afraid of snakes, or if you're just curious about, what's a good snake to get, I would absolutely recommend a ball python.